be recorded. Just to reiterate, if you can make sure that you are on mute throughout this, it would be helpful so we don't get disturbed as we go through. So, as Tina said, I am the Deputy President of the Central Council currently, but in a previous guise, I was the Central Council's Public Relations Officer. I don't profess to have any education, skills, or any of those sorts of things around PR. It is not my day job. It is not something that I have any particular qualifications on, other than I rolled my sleeves up and got my hands dirty. So some of this has all been about trial and error. Some of it has been, just sheer dumb luck, and some of it is common sense. So I am going to share my screen, hopefully, in a minute. Richard, could you put yourself on mute, please, mate? Thank you. So I am going to share my screen and then we'll get cracking. That does mean, of course, that you all now disappear off into the ether, so I can't see you at all. Right. Hopefully you can all see a slide that says awareness or recruitment. Thumbs up if that's true. Somebody tell me they can see my screen. Excellent.
Yeah,
thank you. Good. Okay, so right, let us crack on then. As I said, this is just what I have put together through what I've learned, through reading around the subject, through doing a marketing module as part of my business management degree back in the day. Other than that, it's all been an immersive learning journey. I don't have all the answers, and I'm sure that many of you will have some excellent examples of where local PR has worked really well. And it might be great if we have time at the end to hear some of those stories at the end. As the Central Council's Public Relations Officer, I project managed a number of large campaigns. If you've ever heard of Ringing Remembers or you've ever heard of Ring for the King, that was me, but with a lot of help from a lot of you. Our focus today is going to be on a much smaller scale, more sort of local campaigns, how you can make the best of them, and what tools that we've got available to you to help support you in that. So let's move on. We've got a lot to cover, so we're going to rattle through some of this super quick, and it's why we're going to take questions at the end, because we don't want to get kind of down a rabbit hole of something else. So what we're planning on covering this evening, what's the difference between PR and marketing? They are subtly different, but they are interlinked. Awareness versus recruitment, and figuring out what it is you're trying to actually market or do public relations around. The importance of research and goals, what it is that you're trying to deliver. And then the all crucial planning, understanding what you're going to do, when, how, who's going to be involved, all that kind of jazz. So thinking creatively about engaging all of that needs to be considered, and what tactics you might be able to use to do that. Figuring out what media is best suited to get your message out, whether it's newsletters, websites, social media, TV, print, press, radio, all of that kind of jazz, or all of the above. Really important lesson learned for me was having a contacts list, and that is vitally important, especially for larger projects. We'll talk a little bit around that. I'll give some details, some more general principles around things that you might want to employ when you push your material out. And this could be part of your own kind of local branding, if you like. Talk a little about how to deal with the press. It's a minefield and they all have their own agenda, but you have yours too. And that's important. How we can use, generating buzz around your PR, getting the word out there, events, promotions, have a go sessions, whatever it is you want to get people talking about. We will touch briefly on kind of crisis management. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to think about handling a crisis. It might be that somebody's got injured, might be, a safeguarding concern that the press have got hold of. So what do you do then? And then, we're happy to take some examples maybe at the end. And if you've got any questions, we're going to talk some more about the CC resources available to you with regards to bell ringing branding and what you can use. So let's dive in. So, what's the difference between PR and marketing? So, public relations really is about doing your homework. It's about understanding your organization, your bell ringing team, your guild, your district, your association, whatever kind of level you're kind of delivering at. It's knowing about your ringers, it's knowing about what you're trying to attract, the reason behind what you're trying to do, who are the people that you want to target, and how well does what you're offering fit with their objectives. If you think about, scouts and guides, for example, if you wanted to attract younger ringers and we're looking at the uniformed organizations, how does it fit in with what they're doing? Can they achieve a badge or some recognition for volunteering or community engagement? How would you package ringing to fit them? And it would be very different to how you might package ringing to, I don't know, say the WI or a special interest group or something like that. Strategic planning, this is about defining your target audience depending on what you're trying to achieve. If you're looking to fundraise for a restoration project, for example, who do you want to approach for grants and how does the project interrelate to their core activities and values? What message are you trying to convey to them to get them involved? The publicity, this is all about getting that visibility. If you want to hold an open day or have a go session, you need people to hear about it. This is the proactive placement of information, being prepared to put in a lot of effort here, and you may need, different materials depending on your previously identified target audiences. For example, I'll give you an example. A tower local to me a few years ago were hosting a have a go session that they'd planned, but said that only a couple of people turned up. So I asked them how they'd publicised that event. And they said, well, they put a notice in the parish magazine. I'm like, right, what else did you do? And they said, oh, we put a notice on the A4 poster board outside the church door. Now, what you need to understand is this tower is down a dirt track. It's not on a road. It's not in the centre of the village. They get no passing traffic. No one is going to see that A4 poster unless they're going to that church specifically. So the amount of effort that you put in here will determine the kind of response that you get. Stakeholder liaison. So this is around, again, depending on the kind of project you're trying to run and who you need to engage with. So do you need to invite community dignitaries, the mayor, the local council, the church authorities, local businesses, schools, youth groups, the WI, contractors or investments for a restoration project or something? In the Central Council, we need to engage with very senior stakeholders like the Church of England and government departments and even Buckingham Palace in recent years. Something which until recently we really haven't put much effort into. But thanks to the work that we've done from a number of these big projects and the senior stakeholder work group, we're now having conversations with these groups, fairly regularly. We're helping to develop responses to things. They're helping us to develop materials, particularly if you think back to COVID, we were working very closely with the Church of England and with government departments around all the health and safety aspects around COVID. When you think about ringing for the death of a monarch, we did a lot of liaison with Buckingham Palace and Lambeth Palace, and we get them coming to us now asking for what it is we can do and how we can fit in. But don't forget that your own members are stakeholders as well. Your own ringers in your own tower or your own district or your own association, they're your stakeholders as well. You need to keep their loyalty and enthusiasm going so that you can keep hold of them for ringing, but also use them in promoting whatever it is you're trying to do. You might want to think about some training around how to deal with the media, particularly if you've never done something like that. It might involve, coaching someone to talk to a local interest group or give a presentation such as this. You might need to advise someone on what to say or what not to say. I take calls regarding, incidences that might have happened, and we need to be really careful about how we communicate that, but also how we communicate that within our own membership as well. So as well as, responding to that, you've still got to be respectful to the privacy of the people that are concerned if it was about a particular issue. Marketing is slightly different. Marketing is around the 4 Ps. So product or service. So this is a tangible project, and what it looks like. So for example, if you're producing a leaflet about bell ringing, and you might want to give it as a takeaway from an event, or the service that you want to provide. So whether you're ringing for a wedding or a community event, or you're running a regular ringing school or training event, the product we're marketing now is bell ringing as a whole, or what bell ringing is like in your area, for sure. Price, well, that's an obvious one. How much are you going to charge? As ringers, we give away so much for free, so much of our time, so much of our expertise. But actually, some of these things come at a cost to produce, to put together, to put in place. Whether it's hiring a hall, whether it's providing refreshments, whether it's the production of handouts or materials, all of those things, whether you're offering a host, expenses, all that kind of stuff. So think about how much is this going to cost? And particularly if you're thinking about running a regular training school, you might want to charge a nominal fee to make sure that people who sign up for it actually attend. In which case, it needs to be realistic to cover your costs. Place, well, this is the channel of distribution. So this is, where does your product or service take place? Are you going to a school or an event or an outreach event, or is it happening in your ringing room? If you've produced a booklet about ringing, where are you going to sell it? Is it a bookstall? Are you going to make it available through publications? Is it going to be online? Are you just going to be, handing it out like sweeties, whatever? If you're holding a training event, how do you want people to register to attend? Do they just give you a phone call, drop you an email? Do they use a proper formal registration form? Where is all of that going to take place? And then promotion, this is the advertising bit. This is the selling. This is, of course, where public relations links in and the two join up. So we move on to think about then whether we're trying to raise awareness or about something, or are we trying to recruit people? And again, they kind of interlinked a little bit. So we need to think about helping people understand what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. We need to think about those outreach programs, open days, institutional support and stuff. If you think about the Ringing Remembers and Ring for the King campaigns, these were set up as kind of recruitment campaigns, but the longer term benefits included a much wider awareness of ringing. People heard about it. Anecdotally, people felt more able to come and listen and watch and be part of that. Awareness campaigns, they can drip feed, but there are times when we need to do something specifically around recruitment. And large campaigns like Ring for the King, Ringing Remembers, that they're not sustainable. We're not going to get that throughput of learners once every 4 years when something major happens. So some say that large recruitment campaigns don't support local recruitment and they're not sustainable, but they do make it a lot easier for recruitment. It becomes part of the public consciousness. It's brought organisations to us to request ringing to help promote their messages. But we do need to be careful and make sure that actually it aligns with, what ringing is predominantly about. We get asked time and time again to ring for a particular environmental campaign or for a political reason, stuff like that. And that's not really what ringing is about. So an example might be, we took recently one of the mobile rings to an international scouting event. And now the scouting world is coming to us, asking us to support more of those events. So we're not having to go to them each time. They're coming to us. Local support is huge in making this happen. And sometimes we have to turn these things down because that local support is not forthcoming. So you need to, be really clear on what it is you're trying to support here. So understanding the research and the goals. So this is about understanding the world in which you're trying to operate, those internal, external factors. Internal factors are things like, your ringing room, your ringers that you have available to you, the people that are around you to support. Your external factors could include, the church. You've got to get the church permission if you want to hold another event or want to have a training session on a Saturday on a regular basis or something like that. You might want to get all of these other organizations involved that we talked about earlier if you're trying to, raise money and stuff. So, who is it? Who do you need to approach? How do you go about engaging with them? Being clear on what it is you're looking for. What is your message? What are you trying to achieve by all of this? So understanding all of that kind of why are we doing this? Asking those questions. Why are we doing it? How are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? Who needs to be involved? How's it going to happen? There is a wealth of materials around, and we'll touch on this in a minute. Whether it's within your local association, I'm sure many of you have got a public relations officer or a comms officer, whatever you want to call them, that have got a bunch of stuff. The Central Council has got a bunch of stuff, and we'll go over that in a minute. Excuse me. So, see what else is about there. Search for those other sources of material. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. Someone's already done it. And again, as ringers, we are very generous. It's like, here, have it. You know. So, be really clear on your goal. What is your key message? What are you trying to say? Are you trying to say, this is ringing, this is what we're about, come join us? Or are you trying to say, we need, some bells fixed or some sort of maintenance work done or whatever. So we need, £10,000. Come give us all your money. What is it you are wanting to get out of this publicity or marketing event that you're trying to do? Who is your audience? Again, going back to that target audience, making sure that what you're saying is relevant to them and appeals to them and their values. What kind of responses do you want to generate? Are you wanting people to come to you? Are you wanting to people engage with you? Or are you just wanting to tell people what's going on? And how are you going to share that message? We've talked about different options around, the different media involved. So then we start thinking about, how are we going to do this? We've got to have a plan. Plan's good. Everyone needs a plan. So you might have some other recommendations or other tactics to use. What I've found really good is jumping on a bandwagon. Ring and remembers and ring for the kin were exactly that. Something was happening regardless of whether we got involved or not. It was an open door. We jumped on a bandwagon. I don't think it would have been anywhere near as successful as a standalone project. People bought into, for Ring and Remembers, they bought into that anniversary, the meaning behind it, and it was so, in the public conscious, and a lot of that publicity stuff was there for us. Other more local things that you can jump on, patronal festivals, flower festivals, Heritage Open Days, Bell Sunday, any other kind of local community events and stuff. So find something that you can tap into, that you can say, yeah, we can ring for that. We can help you with that. The next steps, these are basically, this is your action plan for getting on with it. This is your to-do list of how you're going to do it. So Tina's going to talk now a little bit about Yellow Yo-Yo, a company that we engaged with a little while ago to help us with some marketing and understanding, ringing and ringers. So she's going to jump in now and steal the limelight and talk to you about that.
Yes. So when we think about the strategy and the target audience and the target media, one of the things that Vicky pointed out was, not to try and reinvent the wheel by yourself. And in fact, the piece of research that we originally engaged with Yellow Yo-Yo on does exactly that for us. And this document is available on the website. I'm just going to share the document with you, and we'll make sure that you have the link before you go away. Just put that up there. Are we? Oh, it's got me the wrong screen. Sorry, I apologize. I've got too many screens open here. Try this again. There we go. You can see this document here, which is available as a link from the website. So this was done in 2023. In this, I mean, it describes sort of the scope of the what we wanted. And what we wanted was a way of selling bell ringing to people who aren't already ringers. We're very good at talking to each other because we have a shared vocabulary. But we're less good, if we talk about towers and methods to people who aren't ringers, that doesn't necessarily make sense to them. And so this document, if you're planning, and actually I want you to plan some local campaigns, whether it's at your tower or your association level, this gives you a lot about who our target audience could be, who your target audience could be, some language to use, especially this one, adventurous, welcoming, dynamic, logical, traditional, unique. We don't use all those words at the same time, but those attract different people. Those are the things that we think will attract people to bell ringing, different people. Um, and it goes on and on and on about a clarity of a brand vision. So we've got, why we're doing this, what our story is. We want to create a strong story around bell ringing, uh, and how we do that. And on the next slide, which Vicky could just skip over, we've got our key external messages, which is, that we are the custodians of a tradition that's 400 years old. We're committed to growing new members and bringing new people on. We're very welcoming. We bring new practices and technology into ringing as a whole, and we're also driven towards, being as good as we can about what it is we do. And the rest of this document really has ideas and suggestions on how to very quick wins, longer wins, things you can do in community engagement. One of the things that Vicky tapped in on was local events, and local events are massive. And a little bit of social media posting just in a village, so in a village Facebook page, rather than posting it from your own bell ringing account, post it into some other group. Post it into some other group that's local to where you're ring. Our anecdotal evidence saying, one simple post with a really good picture can bring in people coming to the tower, wanting to know what's going on, and in fact, wanting to learn to ring. I'm not going to go through this whole document with you, but I do recommend that you read it through because it does have good ideas about and it does lean in on things like scouting and other community groups where you can do demonstrations, tie-ins with schools, tie-ins with scout groups, and all of these things just make your job a little bit easier, and also actually gives you some return. It will, rather than putting the notice on the church door, go out to where the people are that you want to find. I'm going to turn over to Vicky now. I think if you just pass the brand vision
Yeah.
slide, Vicky, and come into thinking creatively.
Yeah. And while we're doing that, can you pop the link for
I
that
certainly
document in
can.
the chat? That'd be marvelous. So, where are we? Share my screen. Come on. There you go. All right. We're back. There you go. Okay. So we should be on thinking creatively now. So, this is where it starts to get interesting because basically anything goes. You might have to rule some of it out because of cost or health and safety issues or risk assessments and stuff like that, but don't let that stop you from getting your creative juices flowing. Try and get out of the habit of we already tried that and it didn't work. Well, it didn't work then, but things and people have moved on since then, so it might work now. The other one I think is oh, we don't do things like that around here. Well, why not? There's a really good quote, and I think it's from Henry Ford, that says, if we always do what we've always done, we will always get what we've always got. If we start if we continue to use the same old messages, the same old dry posters from the 1970s, with sandals and slippers, sandals and socks brigade, it doesn't give people a very good impression of where we are now. So when I think back to the Ringing Remembers campaign, one of the things I got slated on quite severely by some individuals was around some of the imagery that was used on some of the posters. And, that's not what ringing was about. And the bell's up wrong. So my response to that was, well, go speak to Joe Average in the street and ask them about it. Will they know the bell's up wrong? No. Would they care? No. They can see it's a bell. They got that bit. So, we need to think about, do we want to stay with the same stuffy images of bell ringers from, years gone by? Are we trying to reach new audiences? So we need to use, those evocative images that connect to our target audience and the objective that we're trying to reach. With Ring of Remembers, it seemed to have worked because I think about 1,800 A3 posters and something like 30,000 leaflets were distributed. So they weren't all that bad. So make sure that you know what the project goals are and keep them in mind. Are you trying to recruit, or are you trying to raise funds, or you're just trying to raise awareness of what you're doing? Make sure that you've got all of those facts to hand. If you're fundraising for a restoration project, for example, make sure you know how much you need to raise, what the project actually entails, and how you're going to go about delivering it. Use your own experiences and your own expertise to fill in the story. Make it a personal story people relate to. The people, the bells, the local community, use those previous momentous events to kind of engage with people. Oh, do you remember, when the coronations were and we all came to ring, connect those dots. Look for combinations that tie in with what your objectives are. Is the local school having a fete? So could you take some handbells along or a mobile ring? Is the town centre having a celebration day for some reason? Did you know that a number of counties actually have a county day? I didn't know this until fairly recently. You could use this to organise ringing in, across your towers for the whole of your guild and have a go sessions, including, a mass recruitment opportunity. If you find yourself stuck for ideas or you're going over the same thing again and again, take a break, sleep on it, go back to it a little bit later or whatever. How many times have we all been in the shower and we've thought of the brilliant idea or remembered what it was we were going to do at the least opportune moment? Go do something else, give your brain a break, and then come back to it later. Keep a checklist, or if you're anything like me, I've got a spreadsheet. I've got a spreadsheet for everything. Everything's on a spreadsheet. Keep a list of all your ideas, the pros, the cons, the how it might work, the what you might need to make it happen. You can extend that into, the activities that are involved for each idea, how much it might cost, how much time might be associated with each idea. Always, run your ideas through someone else. It's not just down to you. It's a team effort. But sometimes it's good to run it by someone who's not connected with it, because does it make sense to them? Does it grab their attention? Particularly if you're writing something or producing a leaflet or other material, always get someone to proofread it to start with before you send it off anywhere. But come up with ideas together. Creativity sparks creativity. Someone may have the nub of an idea, but someone else might be able to see how you can take that and develop it into something, bigger and better. But be careful. Don't make the team too big. Otherwise, you'll never get anything done and you just end up in spin of groupthink and, nothing gets figured out then. So let's move on to then deciding, well, okay, we've got a plan. We know what we're doing. So now where are we going to put it? These days, there's just so much by the way of media out there, and trying to use the different types of media to engage with different audiences, and convert those contacts into uptake. Print, for example, covers anything from newsletters from your own or an article in the church or a community or the association newsletter, press releases and radio interviews. They need to be current. There's no point in telling them something that happened last week because it's done and dusted. It's old news. And there's no point in telling them something that's not happening for another month yet. They're not ready for that. Their attention span is very short for print and radio. It's now. Social media is, huge now, isn't it? And the interactive technology platforms that cover everything from, Facebook, X, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Pinterest, and everything else in between. There's hundreds of them now. Most of it's free and relatively easy to use. It gets your message far and wide and to, potentially a huge audience. YouTube allows you to store video footage and, you can live stream events as well. But word of caution, make sure there's nothing there that's going to catch you out regarding health and safety or safeguarding. But this is a great way to show people what ringing is about if they can't be there in person. And we've got a YouTube, Central Council's got a YouTube channel. We've got videos on there. We've got a film that we created a couple of years ago that is really, really good at kind of explaining what ringing is about, which anyone can download and use free. Websites are great. They can carry all your information about your bells, your practices, your service ringing, special ringing, other events and activities that you might do, but it's a little bit more static. So it does require, regular refreshing to keep it fresh and interesting. But you need to be conscious about whether your website is for people who know nothing about ringing but might be interested in finding out more, or is it a repository of information for your existing ringers? And I would suggest that most association websites are a combination of both, but it'd be wise to decide, what is the main point of your website. Sorry, tickle. Exhibitions, these are great. Quite often have them in church or in a community location, but they need to be eye-catching. They need to be, bright, cheerful, short, punchy text elements with lots of bright and engaging photos. People looking at an exhibition won't spend too long trying to read great swathes of text or looking at tiny little dark photos. Make the text big, bold, and the photos, at least A4 size with, that are taken in good lighting and a good resolution, so that people don't really have to kind of lean in to see what it's supposed to be. If you're given a presentation, make sure it's interesting, run through it maybe with an outsider to check. Try not to make it death by PowerPoint, she says, realizing that this is probably exactly that. However, there are times when PowerPoint, has to do. But believe me, if we were doing this in a room together, and I was standing in front of you, I would have very few slides, but I would have a whole raft of things on tables for you to be doing, because what the presentation would be more about is what can you take away, things that you can physically do now, create something that you can take away. We'd have all sorts of things, glue sticks, glitter, you name it, whatever. If you can make it interactive, if you can, get people to play with handbells or boom whackers or all these other, wonderful noisy things, get them to do that. It's much more fun than listening to all this straw. You just have to trust me on that one. And apologies for death by PowerPoint. Okay, so I touched on this earlier. One of the big things that I learned very quickly through Ring of Remembers is keeping a contact list. I was in touch with so many people, radio, TV, print, government departments, ministers, third-party organizations, you name it, everybody wanted a piece of it. I'm trying to remember who was who, what their involvement was, what their contact details was a nightmare. So, I reverted to type. I've got a spreadsheet. And that actual spreadsheet contains international, national, local media contacts. I've probably got contacts for somewhere where you live. Just by doing an easy trawl of outlets. But on a smaller scale, make sure you've got a note of the church comms team contacts or other people in the church that you can talk to. Or if you're talking to the WI or the guides and scouts, have those contact details stored somewhere. And they're really, good for reaching out to when you've got something to do. You might reach out to them for a specific event, but then come a time when you can go back to that and contact them again for something and update them. So the general principles around public relations is understanding the what is your message? What are you trying to achieve? The who's going to do it? Who are you going to engage with? The when are we going to do this? Making sure that it's in a timely manner. The language and style, don't use big, complicated jargon words that, and we've got a lot of them in ringing.
Mhm.
Keep it short and simple. Um, Making sure that what you're producing is of quality, not just like a scrap of paper with a phone number on it or something like that. And this is where having a sense of style and consistent branding helps support all of that. So Tina's going to talk now a little bit about the style guide, um, and how that might help you. Again, free resources and understanding how we, the Central Council, can support you with that. So Tina, over to you again.
Brilliant. Thank you, Vicky. So when I was discussing the vision document, that really discusses our who, what, and when. But if we want to talk about language and style and our quality, we also have a style guide again that's available on the website. I will show it to you, and I will give a link to it when I'm done talking. The doo, 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 doo. And this is actually a print edition style guide. It's a PDF that's available from the Central Council website. It explains all the different ways that you can present the consistent branding that we commissioned and that is available to every ringer and every association free of charge. So, but one of the things, again, if I just sort of point out, we have our values, commitment, teamwork, discovery, quality, empathy, and our perception of bell ringing, adventurous, welcoming, dynamic, logical, traditional, and unique. So this kind of style guide is what a designer, I know Sue is in this audience somewhere, a professional designer would use in order to, establish what how we use our logos, how we use our fonts and stuff like that. So for the average, for the average bell ringer, this might just sort of look a little bit complicated in some ways, but it talks about, different ways we can present this brand in and the color guide, and it gives the fonts. We have free downloadable Google fonts to match this, and then also graphical motifs. All of this is available to be used both as a screen presentation and for print presentation, which are obviously much bigger documents, which we can. Which we can share with anybody on request. And there's also some pre-designed resources available on the website, which we'll go into earlier. In addition to that, we have now developed a platform on which you can design your own brochures or postcards or anything like that using this branding with the branding preloaded. So we're going to, that's my teaser for a little bit later. And this is there for us to use. We didn't just do this and put it out into the ether. We are using it. Quite a few campaigns have used it. We've got a lot of stuff set up, ready for you to use without you having to invent everything from the start. So we really would encourage you to make use. And if you're not sure where to find it, you can just ask us. And the other thing also in terms of, the contacts, media contacts and stuff, we do have a contacts database, and we do have some guidelines on planning certain kinds of events. So if you are planning a big event or a recruitment event or even an awareness event, please do get in touch and have a meeting with us, and we can kind of help guide you through some of these steps as well as help you out with pointing you to the materials that you might need. Okay, over to you, Vicky.
Thank you. All right. Let's go back to, let's pick up then where we left off. So, dealing with the press. This is always fun. They have deadlines and they're usually quite short. There was an instance for once during the coronation where somebody contacted me. They wanted to film some ringing, ready to go out. I'm in the southeast, and they wanted to film it in the northwest. Now, I don't know anybody in the northwest, so I had to scrabble around trying to find some contacts to start with. Then I had to kind of get someone who might be willing to have a film crew go and record them ringing. Then they had to go and get their ringers and get it all set up. I It took a few hours to get this sorted. The woman phoned me back in half an hour saying, "Have you done it yet?" And I'm like, and this was on a Sunday as well, so pretty much everyone was out ringing, so nobody was available instantly. So it was a nightmare. It was fraught with um, you know, trouble because they had a deadline to get their piece edited to go out for the afternoon news. Well, don't phone me on a Sunday then. But that's how it works. They've got a deadline. They've got to get to print. They've got to get on the telly, whatever it is they've got. They quite often have an agenda as well. You know, I've been asked so many times in interviews, is it dangerous? Do you fly up into the ceiling? They want the goss, they want the juicy bit. Is it dangerous? All this kind of stuff. They want to do that. But remember that you've got your agenda as well, and it's really important that when you go to do an interview, it's absolutely acceptable to have some notes in front of you that sets out the points. Again, what I said earlier about your message. What is it you're trying to achieve? What is the story that you want to tell? You know, they've got their agenda to get a newsworthy story, but you've got to get your point across. Where you've got those tie-ins, make sure that you're referring back to them. When we were doing Ring for the King, for example, yes, we were referring back to people who were still around now and ringing for this coronation that rang for the last one. So, we were having all of these different conversations with people who were, ringing, some many, many years later. It's also a really good idea to follow up with them. So if they're going to print something, or they're going to, put something out on their social media, or they're going to, film something, it's going to be on the 6 o'clock news or whatever, ask them to send you a copy of it or a link to it for a number of reasons. Partly to check whether they actually got it right, and we all know, the press have their level of interpretation, let's say sometimes, but also it gives you the opportunity to share it with a much wider audience, and it helps you get your message across. So while we're getting our message across, we want to create some buzz. Buzz is that general term for something that gets talked about. It's that word of mouth. It's that, water cooler moment when you sit there on a Monday morning at work or whatever, and says, someone says, "Oh, what did you get up to the weekend?" Well, if it's like today, I managed to accrue a load of blisters in a peel that I was ringing this afternoon, and now I'm doing a presentation, and at some point or other I'll, have some tea or whatever. I don't know. And you can build all these different kind of hubs around generating. So there could be a hub, there could be a people around expert knowledge. So, you could be talking to, I don't know, a bunch of engineers about something. And you say, well, actually, do you know how bells work, with the wheel and the rope and the pulleys, and, how all of that works? It could be a social hub. And it's like, right, you want to come meet people? That's exactly what ringing is about. Tracking your and messages and your uptake is really easy now, particularly with social media and using hashtags and stuff. So we have there is a hashtag "We Are Bell Ringing." If you stick that on the end of all your posts or whatever, it gives us a really good opportunity to kind of follow the conversation, and then you can kind of see who's jumping in on your conversations and who's sharing it and who's promoting it elsewhere. Um, you know, when you're talking to people, add in those personal experiences. I get asked about ringing all the time, and my boss at work knows the extent to which I'm involved in the central council and stuff like that. So certainly when we were looking at ringing remembers, I was, quite often on the phone to press or whoever, and my phone would ring in the middle of meetings and stuff, and she would just look at me and raise her eyebrows and go on then. because she knows I had to go and, you know, she accepted that as part of my, you know, who I am and what I need to do. You know, when it came to Ring for the King, she phoned me up the day that Queen Elizabeth II passed. And it was just before the announcement was made. Now, I'd been on the phone all afternoon during a workday to multiple media outlets, and they were asking some very pointed questions. In the middle of a conversation, I think it was with The Guardian, my boss phoned. I hung up on her. I phoned her back afterwards, and she said, "Oh yeah, my daughter just wants to know she's going to get a day off school when the Queen dies." And I figured you'd know. It's like bizarrely, um, you know, bring those personal experiences in it. You know, tell people that compelling story, and use those hashtags that you can track where you know the conversation is leading. Tina, did you want to jump in and say anything about that hashtag?
I do want to say something about this hashtag. I want to encourage you all to use it when you're in any social media area, to use the We Are Bell Ringing hashtag, because the more that we use it, the bigger impact it has. And what it also means is that, you know, we're all contributing to each other's awareness campaigns. We're building up a larger awareness and giving an awareness campaign the legs that it really needs. So every time we use this hashtag, it builds up a library of personal experiences, descriptions, invitations, events, and it shows and it will paint in a very, very short period of time a picture of bell ringing, not only just bell ringing where you are, but also showing that you are part of a much larger community, and that what we're doing is very exciting and interesting, and you should join us. I'm done talking now.
Well, for a moment.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So, crisis management, as I touched on at the beginning, you know, occasionally there's a crisis and you get called on to make a statement or pass comment or whatever. Now, you know, this could be anything from, you know, somebody having an accident in the belfry, which, you know, unfortunately does sometimes happen. It could be a safeguarding issue that, you know, within the church that someone somehow got hold of the fact that, oh, this person's a bell ringer or hangs out with the bell ringers or whatever. So you might get asked to pass comment on it. And, you know, it can be really quite stressful and difficult to know how to deal with it. So some few pointers here around, you know, develop a plan for how you're going to deal with crisis management. Um, you know, who's the person people need to contact if there's an issue, for example. What kind of thing constitutes a crisis? Um, so when you get approached, you know, it's having that assessment of, right, what do we need to do in order to respond to this particular incident? And sometimes, you know, you don't need to respond at all. It's just you've been made aware of something. It's like, fine, okay. But if you do need to respond, you know, tell the truth because you'll get figured out if you don't. All right. So, you know, just tell the facts. You know, try not to give opinion. You know, just make sure that you're aware of the facts of the event. You know, be prepared for a bit of backlash, be prepared for, you know, people phoning you up asking for comment, all of that kind of stuff. Make sure that you try to remain compassionate all the time because, you know, if it was an accident, you know, maybe somebody hurt themselves, you know, when they were doing some maintenance or you know, something like that, you know, they're an injured party, you know, be compassionate about that. Um, when there is an incident, you know, make sure you act quickly. You know, don't just let it fester and go, yeah, I'll answer that next week, because actually, you know, a lot of damage can be done by just not responding. Reputational damage anyway. Never say no comment. I know no comment should be a, you know, we're not going to pass comment because we don't know all the facts and all the rest of it, but to a lot of people, just the fact of saying no comment kind of makes you sound a bit guilty about something, rightly or wrongly. Make sure that you return messages. So if you've got people emailing you or phoning you, you know, make sure that you do respond to them in that timely manner. Don't avoid the press because, again, you know, depending on what kind of incident it is, you know, it could, you know, do you some reputational damage if you don't respond to a request for information. And absolutely, if something happened, if something went wrong, then admit it. Fess up and say, yeah, that wasn't the greatest thing, but this is what we're learning from it, and this is how we're going to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Um, I guess one of the things we see a lot about is noise complaints. We have some guidance on noise complaints. Again, Tina, did you want to jump in here and say something about the guidance?
Yeah, I'll put the link in just to remind. This is something that's been going on for over 20 years that the Central Council put together when there were a lot of noise complaints. This is something that, if we deal with on an individual tower by tower basis, we all just get picked off. And at the time, increasing noise complaints through, new housing developments and the like, were really a threat to our exercise. And so we created, a national response. And the result of that, one of the outputs of that was the noise complaints helpline, which still exists and is still running and is nowhere near as busy as it used to be because we did what we needed to do. And reached out to people, but we have this. We have a safeguarding team for offering high level advice. They won't comment on specific safeguarding issues because they're not qualified to do that, and also they shouldn't know about them. But the overall thing on this is if something does happen, you don't necessarily have to handle this on your own. We might have some resources to help you or some messaging to help you or something. You can always, if a problem, if you get a complaint or some incident comes up and the press has a negative view or something, we're here to have your back and to help you engage with that, especially if it's something quite serious. You really just don't have to do this on your own, is really my point.
Cool. Okay, moving on then. So there is a wealth of resources available to you that the Central Council have produced over the years. There's posters, there's notices, there's information on how to engage with the public. There's, all sorts of templates for you to use, leaflets that you can get printed off, leaflets that we've got that we can send you, etc., etc. And now we have a new raft of Canva templates, and Tina's going to give you a bit of a tour.
Yes, yes. And for those of you who know what Canva is and how to use it, I'm just going to request your forgiveness right now, because I don't. So this is sort of my best effort. Let me take you on just to show with you the page of readily available branding and publicity material that's there. You don't have to do anything to it. There's a logo you can add to documents, notices, add to your website, add to a postcard, put it alongside your own tower logo if you have one. We've got that can be added in. You can put your guild or association name or your tower band name in there. It's an editable PDF, and then you can print it off or add it to something else. That's the same version stacked. We have a nice open day poster, redesigned from the older one using the bell ringing branding. And again, this is editable. So once you download it, you can, put in your specific information for the tower open day. And in fact, the Kent County Association refined this further in a way I'll show you, to call it a ringing discovery day, which I thought was a brilliant idea. And then again, we've got contacts in here for who to contact, in order to get the downloadable files, especially for print, because they're very large, and other things like that. You'll notice that we also have our older recruitment leaflets, some of which Vicky has referenced. That's our list of things that we want to convert to the new Brandon. So that's still in our backlog, and I'm going to be looking for help on that. And there's also some social media guidance, examples of publicity coverage, and some other useful material. So this is a really jolly useful page. But for those of you who maybe want to do something a little bit different from what's already sort of preloaded, and before I go on to the Canva tour, I'll just also mention that the Central Council has pull-up banners on this Brandon with recruitment messages or awareness messages, which are available for you to borrow probably just for covering the shipping costs. For any event that you want to do, at the moment, you'll have to contact me until we get somebody in place to manage that for us. But yeah, we have a set of banners, very sturdy, and we also have a set of feather flags with a very distinctive bell ringing Brandon on it, for drawing people in. Several organizations have used this on a regular, semi-regular basis. And the feedback is always that we look nice and professional, and especially when we're going to somewhere like a scout jamboree or a county fair where people have spent thousands on their stalls, having something that gives us some branding and identity helps us stand out in that really, really crowded space. So let me take you to, so Canva is a design tool, which I'm told is very easy to use. And it allows you to create like little social media posts. It allows you to create posters. You can do all kinds of you can design all kinds of things with it, and it's a little bit it's quite a lot easier to use than something like InDesign or other sort of professional design programs. And it gives you a nice little place and lots of helpful tools that you can kind of drag and drop in there. And what we have here, this is a fully professional Canva account that the Central Council owns. It's a nonprofit account. I have 50 licenses that I'm making available to associations for them to use as well, because not all associations, some associations do have their own Canva account, but not all of them can because they can't establish themselves as nonprofits according to what their requirements are. But one of the things we've got in here is all of the brand. Oh, where is it gone? Yeah, here we go. The brand kit that we've been sort of looking at, different various logos and stuff for the bell ringing branding, has a link to the style guide there, but it has these are screen presentation logos in here because that's what Canva is really all about. So it has all the different logos, all the presentations, the swoosh motif, the nice method graphic. So you've got all these assets you can use to drop into a poster of your own creation. We also have the colors predefined there. And in fact, we have actually just added a few more colors to that. So that needs updating. We have the fonts loaded for you, so you don't have to find a font and load it in. We've got our guidance on our brand voice. And this is an area that we want to develop. We have a library of photos from the Central Council. I'm sure you all have good photos. We could bring that all together. So that's all loaded into this Canva, ready for you to work on. And in addition to that, we also have pre-designed some social media frames. So all you need to do is change the text to whatever you want. It has our "We Are Bell Ringing" hashtag, and you're right out there. 5 minutes, you've got a social media post you can put out with no problem, and it looks really good. So we have these texts can be changed, this logo can be changed. You can add another hashtag. Or you could just use this text. Why not? And then there's also a sample where you can put a quote. So, say if you wanted to have a personal story, why ring or something like that, this is a great way to sort of put that out there. Again, just sort of pulling this idea that we're all campaigning on the same thing. And we've got a sample for a photograph. So you can put a photograph of one of your local ringers in, a little quote, and push that out as a social media post. Yeah, don't use that picture. But also, you can have, we've got a pre-formed social media card for Tower Open Day. the Ringing Discovery Day, which I think is great, and also some other Give Ringing a Go kind of thing. So there's a lot of different templates that you can use in here, and you just copy it over and add your own words and do your own editing. Um, so I think, and what my vision for this is that if everybody uses this space for developing their materials for their campaigns, it means that what this will grow into is a library of resources that we can all take part in and all share in. So if I had, if so for example, let me just find where I'm at here. I have to go back one, I think. Um, yeah, so I'm again now completely lost. Sorry. Yeah, so you can see there's in there somewhere, and I'm not going to try and find it now because I'm just exposing my ignorance of this software. The Kent County Association designed a poster using the branding and the tools available in this, and this is a fully professional thing. It also has an AI tool, which I think is a bit rubbish, but it's worth giving a go and having an experiment with. Um, and we can all go in. So, if the Lancashire Association develops a really nice porch poster or something, and you're thinking, oh no, what I really, really want is a good porch poster. Is there any examples out there? Oh, look, there, Lancashire Association's done that. Let's see if I can, let's see if I can borrow that and make it our own. And one of the things that's due yet to go in here as well is some templates you can use for dropping into a PowerPoint presentation, again, sort of pre-formed so you can just edit the text and edit some pictures. So that's one of our projects that's underway. So really, to get access to this, all you have to do is ask. And what we ask in return is that you use it and don't just let it sit there unused. We have one per association available. If you, it's probably helpful if you've got somebody who's used it before and can find their way around in it. It's just a little bit easier, but just let us know. And I think that's about all I can say on that, Vicky. So I'm going to stop my sharing unless I've forgotten something.
I mean, if you have, that's on you.
I
Um,
know, I know, I know.
okay. So what next for marketing bell ringer? This is you.
This is me. This
Mm.
is me. Yes, but I'm not going to share my screen now. So this is where we're getting the begging bowl out, guys. The for marketing bell ringing, we have talked about this is one of our key platforms for the Ringing 2030 strategy. And we have an awareness campaign ready to launch, but we need somebody to do it for us. I mean, we need somebody to coordinate that and to put together a team that will keep these social media feeds going out there because the thing is not just doing it once. The thing is keeping it going and keeping that drip feed in. And if we have a national awareness campaign going on here centrally, that supports all of your local campaigns. And all of your local campaigns feed into the national campaign. So my first ask is that you do some local campaigns. Take this away and think about it and think about what you can do either as an association or even just locally in your village or your tower or anything, even just find in the local groups that might, where you can put in some social media things. And social media is cheap and gives us a really big return. So, that's it's a really, really quick win. Uh, so we need to do that, but actually, we don't at this point have a marketing work group in order to lead this project on for us. And this is a really, really important part of what we're trying to do. So we need, one special person to be, the work group lead, which is not the person who does all the doing, but is the person who does all the coordinating and make sure that some of these projects get underway. We have some paid support that we're going to insert into this space, but we still need that leadership on the outside. And we also need some people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and get on with doing. So, creating some social media posts, helping to organize these Canva accesses, thinking of other things that we might need to apply the branding to, and other projects that we might want, coordinating with scouting groups, and also reaching out to ringing associations to help support some of those scouting events that we really want to do. So Vicky and I have gotten our hands very, very dirty in this space, and we've done a lot to kind of just keep it afloat. But to be honest, both of us have other roles in the Central Council. And if we do this, then there's all kinds of things that we're not doing, like, progressing the intangible cultural heritage thing, making sure we have decent hiring practices in place, and making sure we don't run out of money for starters. So we need some help. So I'm hoping in this group that there are some people who would be willing to step forward and help us build a new marketing group targeted specifically around helping to get this national campaign off the ground. We have and bless you. I mean, a lot of you have put a lot of good ideas into the chat, and I think they're brilliant, and I would love to hear more about them. But when we open this up for questions, I do want to hear more about those specific campaigns that you've already run that are already successful. But we want ideas, but what we really need is people to execute them. So that is our ask. Yeah, and a public relations officer, that would also be good. This is really hamstringing us. Things like Bell's Sunday, we're unable to promote in the way that we would like to promote. And other events as well. We just don't have the bandwidth to do it without some help. So I've got my begging bowl out. And for that, and with that bombshell, it would be nice to turn it over to anybody who would like to share, what activities they've undertaken and what they've done uh, to and what they've done to help out. Again, you're going to have to use a raise hands. Sophie Ash has asked whether any of the leaflets already translated into Welsh. No, but if you're volunteering, Sophie, we're very, very open to it. I need to change my view a little bit so I can see.
Nobody wants to put their hand up.
Nobody wants to put their hand up.
Nobody wants to tell us anything.
No hands.
Right. Oh, scouting is a good one. So one of the things that we're
Tina, somebody called Louise Davidson has put her hand up according to the chat.
yes, Louise, you can unmute yourself now.
Hi, it's Louisa.
Oh, Louisa,
Yeah.
apologies. Yes.
I need a new pair of glasses.
That's okay. Hi. Sorry, I couldn't find. I'd lost the reactions bar. It's been a while since I've used Zoom. So I'm the new publicity officer for Devices branch in the Salisbury diocese. But I've been in marketing for absolutely years, particularly in arts marketing, community arts marketing. I'm also a returner to bell ringing after 3.5 decades.
Fantastic.
For the last year. So a couple of things struck me. One was, oh my God, the recruitment problem in bell ringing. When I learned in the 80s, there was lots of bell ringers around and lots of people could ring methods. And now my biggest problem as a returner is development of bell ringing, getting past call changes, there aren't enough opportunities, but also getting people to ring as well. So in the people that we have, so it's not just about getting new people in and learners in and getting that flow through of learners, but getting people progressing and keeping their interest. And so to get to my point, one thing that seemed to work was I set up a WhatsApp group. I'm on like about 10 WhatsApp groups now for Barry. It's crazy. But one of the ones that's really useful is I wrote to all the tower correspondents / tower captains in our branch and also the surrounding branches and asked them to join this WhatsApp, which we call Barry and Call Out. And just so people could say, are there other bell ringers out there who want to do, I don't know, Sunday or weddings or whatever? But it also became a wee bit social. It's got people from other towers talking. And I think when people join, it can be a bit of a lone, it can feel like you're just with your own band, and some people like that. So I think looking beyond that initial recruitment feed, really developing that feeling that you're part of a community, and stuff like simple ideas like a WhatsApp group across towers can be really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks. That's a really good idea, and a really good point, that because our aim with Ringing 2030 is not just to recruit people. Our aim is to have more bell ringers, and the point you've made, Louisa, is very, very important. And ringing associations play a vital role in this, because you've got the feet on the ground, and you know where, what needs to be doing. So the days when we can sit back and let people wander in from when they got kicked out of the church choir are over, and we need to face up. We need to face into that reality. But we do have some technology we can take advantage of, like WhatsApp, to help do that communication, and a way of making individual learners and individual towers not feel isolated, and having learner practice groups, and even sort of routes to development. That's something that associations can do particularly well. And some associations do this very, very well, and it's quite impressive. Yeah. Anybody else like to share an experience? People are still coming and going. So Peter, you've put in something in the chat about what you've done locally, showing what's available to them. Would you like to just speak to that a little bit? So I haven't had a chance to look at that link.
More than happy to. Yeah, it just came from various comments from ringers going, what's out there? People are very insular within their towers. So we had to think about it and put together some leaflets sort of showing how ringing spans beyond your tower. Very much for anybody coming in new, but actually it's been quite useful since we've done this end of last year. More people have been coming out to branch and association events.
Really?
So it's really sort of showing, how we always say how the people we interact with are those that are keen already. How do we get the other two-thirds of them that just happily ring in their towers on Sundays and that out? And it's had a small effect. So for what it cost us to print them at about 8p a copy, it was definitely worth it.
That is a really good idea. And this is an idea that can be borrowed and rolled out in other places as well. So, sharing these ideas is definitely what we want to see more of. Anybody else have anything they want to share? I'm just having a look at Susan, you very thoughtfully put in something on the Scout badges that I'm just calling out the Derby DA on this. Is they've done a huge amount of outreach work with the local scouting groups in Derby, and now have a badge, a bell ringing badge that they developed with the scouts. And it's absolutely brilliant. And this is something that the Young Ringers for Ringing 2030 work group is going to take forward and roll out across the country, including the Central Council sponsoring some of these badges, just to make sure that they stay out there. But Susan, would you like to talk about what you did in order to get that engagement going?
Well, I'm on the Derby DA Education Committee. We were sort of marginally involved with the Scout Badge initiative, but it was basically two other ringers, one of whom's a scouter, and another ringer who basically took it forward, and they actually set up I think it's called an SASU, which is like a sort of a special unit for bell ringing in Scouts. And so we've been working quite closely with the Scout Association, and my main role was actually designing the badges, and also going through the syllabus and sort of checking it for sense. because we've actually got 4 badges. The first one is called Know About Ringing, which any scout of any age could do, even from the little beavers. It's basically where you go along to a ringing experience evening at a tower. It's the sort of thing where you might go and have a look at the bells. You find out how they work, depending on the size of the bells and things, whether you do backstrokes or not. You might do sort of other activities like playing about with rainbow bells, handbells, other sorts of activities like that. And there's a little bit of finding out to do. And then they could earn the Know About Ringing badge. So know About Bell Ringing is what it's called. Then for the scouts who actually learn how to ring, it's called a bell ringer badge, and there are 3 stages. The first one is when they can ring probably rounds and call changes. Then the second one is when they're sort of like plane hunting to methods and things like that. And then the third one is when they're ringing inside to methods and so on. That's roughly the syllabus. Don't take the word for it, but they're the sort of rough stages. So that's it really, and they were launched at the beginning of this year, which is fab.
Yeah, it is fab. It is absolutely fab. Beverly Sproats, is that how I pronounce your surname?
Yes.
Your hand is up.
Thanks, Tina. I love the idea of the scout badges, Susan. Thank you. We've got quite good links with the Cubs and Scouts near us, and we quite often get a group of Scouts or Cubs or Beavers or Brownies come and have a go at ringing. And we split them into groups, and one group rings, one group get a tour of the church, and one group do a quiz on things around the church. Depending if they're old enough, we can take them up the tower to see the bells. And we've found that we've had a couple of recruits come out of that, but we haven't maybe been massively intentional about it. It was just that one of the scouts was interested to continue, and they're doing really well. And then we also had one of the scouts who carried on bell ringing because they wanted to do it as a Duke of Edinburgh award scheme skill. So that might be another possibility. We haven't followed that up with schools or anything, but maybe if students are looking to do their Duke of Edinburgh awards, they have to learn a skill. So maybe there's an option there. Thanks.
Brilliant. Yeah, we do have bell ringing on the Duke of Edinburgh website as both a skill and a volunteering activity that can be chosen from. And of course, with the Art Learn to Ring scheme, that gives you an easy, a pretty straightforward logbook. But then also there's these Scout and badges, which have a syllabus as well. So there's a lot of ways to, you don't have to invent that one from scratch either. Jeremy Bowman.
Yeah, hi, thank you. It's a really interesting point that's been raised there. So thanks for the presentation. One of the things that came up in a PCC meeting at church just a few weeks before Christmas was thinking about how we reach out to a wider range of people as a church, and a point was raised on that had been looked into by the central church actually was how churches promote their activities. And one of the points that was raised on that was that very often use of certain social media platforms or certain forms of promotion can actually be quite detrimental to different generations that you're trying to attract in. The point was made, and I think this was quoted somewhat directly, but if it's on Facebook or has a poster, that's for the older generation, and it turns younger people off from it. And I think one of the things that's quite important as a result of that viewpoint is to try and incorporate a wide range of social media platforms, particularly if we're trying to attract younger people into bell ringing at an early age. Platforms such as Snapchat, TikTok, which many of us probably have very little clue about of being of a certain age range, is something that really has to be engaged with. And I think looking at involving young people in the promotion of both awareness and recruitment is absolutely key because they understand those platforms and how to promote.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a really important point. We're very aware that our what we're going to call the traditional social media channels aren't reaching the people we want to reach. Definitely. And there's also the whole thing about, the rise in evangelical congregations. And that's a lot of young people are involved in that kind of church activity. And is there a way we can work with those congregations to sort of make bell ringing a part some clean, healthy living and community and that kind of thing. So those are very good. I really also like your point about getting young people involved in the promotion. I think that's really important. The younger ringers in your association or your local area or your local tower are powerful ambassadors for bell ringing. But more to the point, well, as much to the point, is that people think when they're just learning to ring, they don't really have very much to give to bell ringing, but they're great ambassadors for bell ringing and great and they're great to sort of grab them for a quote or a story that you can share on your website, share out to social media, or farm out to reporters, because they're so new, they're really enthusiastic, and they can really speak to other new ringers in a way that people who've been ringing for 50 years cannot. Yeah, and so they have a really excellent role to play. I see that in my own tower. Our newer recruits get a lot from our, just slightly a few months ahead of them learners, and the support network that they have between them there is really helpful at helping us to keep them and keep them interested. So those are really good points. And yeah, we need to be learning about other social media platforms other than Facebook, which, has problems. Alison Everett has asked a question in the chat. How many bell ringing TikTok accounts are there? Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea how many bell ringing social media accounts are there out there. I mean, they're easy for anybody to set up. They're on this Zoom, who the youngest, yeah. You know what? They're off bell ringing, which is where they should be. So,
Nice.
yeah. But it is possible to get younger ringers involved in some of this stuff. It's just a question of presenting it to them in the right way. Andrea Haynes, our young persons work group lead, has been phenomenally successful at getting engagement from university students and societies and helping out. And the refreshed version of the University Ringing website, which has done yeoman service for more than 15 years, I think, has had a bit of a refresh. And I've just been looking at the draft that's about to be released, and it looks absolutely fantastic. And it does sort of touch on it uses the branding and it uses the messages to really make ringing sound way more exciting than it probably is. But shush, I'm not saying that. Anybody else would like to say anything?
If it's all gone quiet, I just wanted to raise people's awareness before everybody starts dropping off the call. There's a couple of briefing sessions and open sessions coming up soon. The recruitment and development work group have got another open briefing session on the 8th of February. And amongst other things, they're going to be talking about the launch of the recruitment network. And the recruitment network open session takes place on the 1st of March. So, if we're talking about all things promoting ringing for recruitment, then they're two sessions that you need to be at. So watch out for instructions on how to join those two sessions coming out very soon.
Brilliant. Okay.
I want to have a quick, Tina, really want to have a very quick mention of cultural heritage.
Yes, I was thinking about that. I was just sort of desperately looking for the link.
It's on the council website.
It is on the council website.
On the front page.
The one of the things that we're working on right now is getting us through the first barrier to being part of the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage listing scheme. The first step of that is being part of a UK-based inventory of what are they're calling them living heritage crafts and activities that people do that are special and deserve safeguarding. They use safeguarding not in our legal sense of safeguarding, but in safeguarding in terms of protecting them so that they don't die out. And that is not preserving them in aspects so that there's no change. It's, preserving them as a living, breathing thing that people do. We think this is going to be really beneficial. One, about raising awareness about bell ringing. It will really help that. And it helps to give us some clout with other conservation bodies in terms, and especially if we're looking at changes of use issues with places with bells in them, and also government organizations. The task force is beavering away, putting together a submission, which we're going to put in at the end of March. So we have a very, very short time frame, but there is a link to a petition that we would ask all of you to go and put in your support. Because one of the primary things we need for this stage is an indication from the bell ringing community that they're in favor of us doing that, and they're in favor of the Central Council acting as the central coordinator on behalf of bell ringing to do that. And I think this is going to be a really good thing. We've got well over 1,200 submissions on that. We have asked also associations to submit an expression of support. So as many people give an expression of support as possible, really help us out. It's a pretty painless way to support bell ringing at this stage. So, but yeah, go in, check out the website, go into the petition, and there'll probably be some other larger consultation events coming in down the line. So keep your ears peeled for more of these kinds of meetings. And on that, a 1-month exhibition plan for May about bells and bell ringing at Carlisle Cathedral. Oh, that sounds really good. So, yeah. Well, Ronald, let us know if you want some banners or anything to help out with that, because I've got about 4 of them in my house. And I'll be in Carlisle in April, so I could deliver them.
Personal service. There you go.
There you go. Personal service.
Above and beyond.
That's right. That's right. Yes. Okay. If we don't have any more comments and stuff, that was great. Some of the messages you've all put in the chat have been really super, as well as links to stuff you've already been working on and already doing. Really, really great to share that information. And it is really fantastic. So many of you turned out to listen to Vicky and I go on and on. And hopefully you found some of it helpful. And please spread the word. We've put all this stuff in place and we want it to be used. We don't really want it sitting on the website gathering dust. So please put it to use. Spread the word out. Tell other people they can use it. And if you're struggling with anything, if there's something you think you need that we don't have, let us know and we'll look at what we can do about rectifying it. And then also, come and help us out. Be part of the change. Alison, you need to unmute first.
Done it. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. I've been at work, so I didn't get here till a lot later. I wondered, I understand you're recording this. Will
Yes.
it be available for people who weren't able to make it,
Yes.
or
Yes.
who to have a look at later?
Yes.
Yes. So I might not do it today because it's 9 o'clock, and quite frankly, I want to go and get some supper. And then I'm out. Guess what? Ringing tomorrow. So it might not be before Tuesday evening, but it will be put up on the Central Council's YouTube channel, and then we will publicise the fact that it's there and send a link out. So you can go back
Thank
and
you.
watch the beginning that you missed, or you can send the links out to other people that you really want to make sure they sit down and pay attention to.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Right. Well, everybody, I will let you get back to the rest of your Sunday evening, and keep in touch and have a nice evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you.